From the Dallas On Air studios of beautiful Dallas, Texas, this is Fulfillment here on DallasOnAir.com. And now here's your hosts, the Vegabomber PJ Dunn and the film samurai Carlos Salinas.
All right, welcome everybody out there. Thanks for watching the Fulfillment Show. Today I have with me, as always, on the right-hand side, the film samurai himself, Carlos Salinas.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
Yes. And that big voice behind the camera is also a man known as Kazak.
Greetings and salutations, campers. Welcome to DallasOnAir.com.
Yes, y'all. So we're back. And so if you've been watching, you know we've been looking at the decades. We looked at the 60s, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and now we have to go to the aughts, or the 2000s, and then the 20-teens?
The 2010s. Yeah.
What do we call that, Carlo?
The 10s.
The 10s.
Let's call them the 10s.
The awkwards.
We're going to call it the awkwards.
Yes, which is the decade that's going to be known for films right before the 2020 COVID starting of a new decade, right?
The missing decade.
Right? We can't go to the theater.
Decade.
Yes. So, if you're new to Fulfillment, thanks for watching. This is the show where we talk about all things film. This is movie collectibles as well. Who wrote it, directed, acted it, what were they connected to in other films, this sort of thing. If it's about movies, Carlos, this is what we talk about, right?
That's all we talk about. Love it. Talk about it all day long.
All day long. So if you like that sort of thing, then you're in the right place. So today's episode will be about the 2000 decade and 2010. And before we get into that segment, we usually like to start off with our appetizer segment. And that is just catching up and finding out what we've recently just watched, or we call it just seen it. And there's my wiki. So, as is our custom, we start with the film samurai. What have you seen?
All right. PJ, I haven't seen much of anything because I'm just tired of movies.
That's a great way to start off a film talk show, sir.
I've just had it. No, I'm just kidding.
Psych.
Psych. Yeah, I saw a movie Friday afternoon, snuck out of work early, went to go see Unhinged. The new flick with Russell Crowe.
Okay.
You know him as Gladiator, right? The
Gladiator Maximus.
Here's the synopsis.
Okay.
After a confrontation with an unstable man at an intersection, a woman becomes the target of his rage. So yeah, it's pretty much all it is. It's just this guy's having a bad day. He's gone through divorce. You know, a lot of people will compare it to what's that Michael Douglas movie?
Falling Down?
Falling Down.
Kind of like, sort of like that.
All right.
Okay.
But
In a car,
it's
though.
more the point of view of the woman. She's gone through divorce too. She's taking her kid to school. She's at a point in her life where everything's going bad for her. She's a hairdresser. She's losing clients. She's always late. And then, this truck is in front of her. She honks at it like, wow. She doesn't give it the little tap, you know.
Okay.
And of course, he pulls up next to her and tells her to roll down the window, and she does. And then it's one thing after another. And yeah, it's a pretty brutal movie. I was sort of shocked at how over the top violent it is.
Wow.
There's a scene in a coffee shop. It's like, wow, you're like, whoa, okay. So Russell Crowe is Russell Crowe. I mean, he's mad. He's one of these actors. He's Australian, right?
Yeah.
He's like Mel Gibson type. He's just everything he does. He's like on the verge of insanity. And yeah, he plays his role very well. I mean, he's big and hulky, and he's very menacing. And then it's almost like a slasher film. Like he's the Shape chasing her throughout this film, and she's doing what she can to survive. You know, and there's little, clues here and there that kind of feed you what's going to end up happening if you pay attention. And yeah, it gets to a pretty good climax. And yeah, you're rooting for her, of course. This actress played by Karen Pistorius, and I don't know who played her son, but unknown actress. I haven't seen her really in anything else that I know of. And Derek Borte is the director. He directed this movie called The Joneses. It came out a few years ago, but I don't remember seeing that. I just remember Demi Moore and David Duchovny were in it. I think it was about like this rich family in a suburban neighborhood. But yeah, I mean, it was okay. I mean, it's not an essential movie to go see in the theater. Wait for it when it comes out on streaming or whatever and catch it there. But yeah, I wouldn't pay full price to go see it. I saw it like a
Okay.
matinee. So yeah, it's okay.
Okay. All right.
Nothing great. It's not a five-star movie. More
Yeah,
like
it's not
3,
Beautiful
2
Mind.
and a
It's
half,
not Gladiator. It's not any of those.
But if you've seen the marketing for this movie, it's pretty wild. I mean, it's just Russell Crowe sitting in front of a camera, and he's doing this kind of poetic speech about like some film and image and sound, and then he just kind of at the end just becomes the real Russell Crowe and just kind of laughs it off. It's really weird gimmick marketing, but it was effective, I guess. But I don't know how well this movie's going to do, but
Unhinged, huh?
he's unhinged.
Okay, well, we'll take a note on that. Okay, Zach, what have you seen, brother?
All right, so I went back to my childhood. I had to go back to this one because this is one of my holy grail films. I've been looking for this film for years on disc, on Blu-ray, because I wanted a physical copy of it. And I've been looking for it for years. And finally, I found it on Shout Factory. Shout Factory is one of those kind of distribution houses that specializes in strange and hard to find stuff.
Get that, everyone? What is it called again?
It's called Shout Factory.
Shout Factory.
Shout,
Okay.
S-H-O-U-T.
Oh, okay.
So,
It's kind of like Criterion, but for cult movies. Right?
Yeah.
Cult movies and
Genre films, horror films.
Yeah, and they used to do like classic CDs and things like that. Basically, it's kind of a retro sort of exploration place. So I found this one. I've been looking for it. If you're familiar with horror, you know the Evil Dead franchise, and you know the Evil Dead franchise is basically a three-headed monster of director Sam Raimi, actor Bruce Campbell, and producer Rob Tappert. Mm-hmm. Now, but what you may not know is that the Michigan Mafia has ties to Joel and Ethan Coen through this film. It's a film called Crime Wave. Crime Wave is one of these films that basically absolutely no one saw in the theater.
That would be me.
No one knows this film exists, and there's a good reason for it because it disappeared. Basically, it disappeared because the release house, Embassy Pictures, owned by Norman Lear, no one wanted this film out because it for all intents and purposes, it's fairly terrible. Reviews got awful, but like I said, it got basically released in 2 states, Alaska and Hawaii or something like that, to basically qualify it for an HBO release, which is where I saw it, because as a kid, I saw, this wonderful film.
Okay.
Because in 1985, this film is great because, as one of the actors put it, it's a Three Stooges movie if it were directed by Alfred Hitchcock.
Okay.
The basic plot of it is this hapless pencil neck geek security guard gets embroiled and framed for murders done by a pair of exterminators, played by Paul L. Smith, who you'll recognize as the crazy Turkish guy from Midnight Express, or Bluto from Popeye, and Brian James, who you'll recognize from Blade Runner.
Okay.
And basically, it's a Bugs Bunny cartoon come to life. You can absolutely see the specific influence that Sam Raimi has from, just Three Stooges films and cartoons and things like that, all embroiled in this weird, colorful chase movie. Everything is just ridiculous in it, from the actors to the plot to the action. You've got actors like Louise Lasser, Chuck Norris's co-star from Walker Texas Ranger is the only other thing the female lead did. It's just
Wow.
Again, basically no one saw this film, and for good reason, because basically it was Renaissance Pictures and Sam Raimi's first venture into the studio system, because he's coming right off of Evil Dead, which was a huge success for a small budget film. So now he's got a budget, and now he goes way over budget, and the studio just wants to hide this piece of shit because they don't want anyone to see it because they're embarrassed of it. But again, it's one of those films that wasn't for a tax.
Sounds reasonable.
And I mean, if you hear all the stories about the making of the film, it's brutal, because I mean, they're shooting this on top of bridges in January in Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the Sam Raimi School of Filmmaking at this time, because he is filming out of Michigan. He's doing what he knows from Evil Dead, and it's just a horrible experience for everyone.
It already
involved.
sounds painful.
But the film is bizarre and it's fun, and you actually can see Sam Raimi coming into his own as a filmmaker, because you're getting all these great angles and animation and just spectacular close-ups of just these weird character actors, which for visually it's fun.
This is before Darkman.
This is I think Darkman was what, 89? Because Evil Dead 2 is 87. And so
don't get me the line.
Yeah, so this is 85, and Evil Dead is 81. So basically, it's his first intro into the studio system. But basically, for all intents and purposes, it's just a fun film. And like I said, if you're a Sam Raimi fan, it's one of those kind of films that you have to go chase down. This one, like I said, because Shout Factory released it, it's kind of one of those underground, under the radar things. If you're a Sam Raimi fan, a Bruce Campbell fan, anything like that, go find the film and do the research on the film, because the way it was made and getting it made is just as interesting story as the film itself.
Crime Wave from 1985, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
Love it. Well, I like the film Samurai. I didn't watch a lot of stuff as well, but as you guys have been watching for a while, I love music as much as I love the movies themselves. And so if I can ever watch a biopic, I'll try to watch it, or at least something that attempts to be a documentary to help us understand the behind the scene things that went on for a band. And so what I watched was something called The Show Must Go On. It's a Netflix original documentary that they did. It was released in 2019, and I think that the director was Simon Lepton and Christopher Bird, who I don't know as much about. And so what this documentary was about was, how do you take an enduring rock band called Queen, have their lead singer die of disease, and he's no longer there, but he's this innate guy who everybody knows, and he has a great voice. He's wonderful. Everybody loves Freddie Mercury. He's super talented, and he was one of the best showmen ever, right? So what happens is that people are saying, we want Queen still, from the nostalgic factor, right? So if Kiss can get back together and other groups can get back together, Queen's going to have to, right? Because they sold a lot more albums, I think. And so the idea was, how do you find the perfect frontman to replace Freddie? You can't, right? And so that's why I love that this documentary does. It shows the different collaborations that they did with people. But eventually what happened was it ended up being Adam Lambert, who was the guy that won... what was it? American Idol. He was he took second place. Some other guy beat him out, but he got to end up being the guy who was going to be the featuring man for Queen. Now, this is very interesting because, as you know, most people are going to try to compare him to Freddie, but there is no other Freddie. You can't be Freddie, and he was smart enough to realize that. So I love that he didn't try to be Freddie. While he's also a gay man, he was also saying, I want to go ahead and just do it my flair, the way I would do it today. And the interesting thing is Adam Lambert actually can sing. He can sing really, really well, just like Freddie, but I think Freddie still had more octaves. But Adam Lambert can carry a tune by himself if he needs to. So now it was taking somebody from a newer generation and taking somebody from an older generation, a band rockers, right? Rockers.
They've seen it all, right?
Putting them together and saying, how do y'all recapture the magic again? Because people are willing to pay for nostalgia. We all know this, right? And how do you do it? And then how do you do it authentically without looking like you're just mimicking? So you remember Van Halen had the same problem, right? Because once David Lee Roth was out of there, then they brought in Sammy Hagar, who is an accomplished guitarist on his own right. But could he be David Lee Roth? Could Van Halen be Van Halen, or does it become Van Hagar? Yeah. Right. So it's actually pretty good. I would say that if you do have some time and you are a big music fan, and if you love Queen, they do show segments of him singing the parts that Freddie would have sung if he was still alive in some of the most iconic songs. So Under Pressure, the crazy little thing called Love, Killer Queen, all that stuff. All that's done, and you get to see how he does it. And it's nice to see him not try to mimic at all. He just
like they're a Queen cover band now.
Yes, exactly right.
Well, and they try this a couple of years earlier with Paul Rogers from Bad Company, and
Yes.
again, Paul is a nice dude, but he's not Freddy. And Adam Lambert, you get that presence on stage that was very much Freddy, because not only do you get
Flamboyance.
not only do you get that voice, but you get that image and that presence on stage,
Yes.
which is undeniable. For Queen, you need to have that flamboyant frontman.
Yes.
Who was absolutely Adam Lambert.
Absolutely. And so it would be the perfect story. And I guess kind of when you watch it, what you're excited about is you get the idea that somewhere up there, maybe Freddie's looking down going, you got the right guy. Right.
Wow.
So, but just a younger version and lots more energy, I think, in a lot of ways, in some ways, but it's good stuff. So if you like that sort of thing, it'll be great. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we've served you the appetizer. Now it's time for the entree. So we're going to get into our decade topic right now. We're going to look at the 2000s or the aughts, the best movies or enjoyable movies, really, or even movies that kind of shaped the way we continue to look at movies through the decades. And we'll start with you, Carlos.
Yeah, the early movies that we talk about, the 70s and so forth, those were movies that kind of formed the way we watch movies and what inspired us to get into films. And these, I think, I consider movies that tell me, yeah, there's filmmakers that still care about the craft and can have an artistic vision and put something out there that's a cut above the rest. And I'll start with the 2007 a film called There Will Be Blood, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. He's become one of my favorite American filmmakers, still making great films. Every film I've watched of his has just been great. This one stars Daniel Day-Lewis, Paul Dano. It's a great. It takes place in the early years of America when we were just exploring and discovering, and it opens with like a 10-minute sequence where there's no dialogue at all, and it's just Daniel Day-Lewis in a pit digging a well to find oil, and the story takes off. He encounters this landowner who has a son who is one of these like a preacher, and in order for him to get part of the land, he makes a deal with Daniel Plainview, but he forces Daniel Plainview to get on his knees and recite this thing over and over, and you can tell Daniel Plainview was just furious at having to do this, having to succumb to this charlatan is probably how he thinks of him.
Yeah.
And man, it's a heavy film. The acting is fantastic. Johnny Greenwood's score is something else, and I definitely recommend this for any cinephile. If you're a real cinephile, sure you've seen this movie already, but yeah, it's one of the greats of the 2000s. Same year, Ethan and Joel Coen made No Country for Old Men, and actually these two films were shot within miles of each other, because there's a scene where in There Will Be Blood where an oil derrick explodes and there's a huge fire and it's just smoke billowing into the air. Well, when they were shooting No Country for Old Men in that same area, they could see that fire.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
But yeah, Josh Brolin, Tommy Lee Jones plays this grizzled old Texas Ranger. And if you know the legend of the Texas Ranger, these were the baddest of the badasses.
Yeah.
One Texas Ranger could beat up a whole room of,
Outlaws.
in a barroom brawl. One guy could just go stop 20 guys. These guys were just vicious. They knew how to handle it.
They were Marines on horses.
Pretty much. Javier Bardem plays probably one of the strangest movie villains you'll ever see.
Yes.
And he's got that weird hairdo. And Josh Brolin is a guy who just came across a drug deal that went bad, takes the money, and then it's just like a chase film from then on.
Yeah.
And there's some quiet scenes of just Shagur talking to this gas station owner and telling him to flip a coin. And he says, what have I got to lose? It's everything. It's like, this is so well written. When the Coen brothers do these kind of films, they're like something to behold. It's just a great film. 2009 pretty much closed out the 2000s with, I think this is my favorite Tarantino film. I'm going to go say yes, it is.
Okay.
Inglourious Bastards. It's kind of a retro take of the World War II era. where Hitler dies. You know, he kind of did the same thing with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but this is maybe this is where he started it.
Right. Right.
It's a fantastic cast. Brad Pitt, Aldo Rain. I love his southern accent in it when he's talking to the he accumulated this group of Jews, and he wants these guys to just kill Nazis. That's going to be their job. And he wants scalps, you know. Every one of you owes me 50 scalps, and I want them. Michael Fassbender plays this German. He speaks German very well, and he has to impersonate a German officer at the climax of the movie. Melanie Laurent is Shoshana. You know, God, but this opening scene with Christoph Waltz in this farm, this French countryside, this milk farmer, is probably one of the most intense, like edge of your seat opening scenes of any Tarantino movie or any movie at all, and the ending of it is great. This is just I've seen this movie multiple times. I could watch it again today. It's just so good. I think it's Tarantino's best work. That's it. That's from 2000s.
It was not one of my. It was not my favorite Tarantino film.
Well, which one would you say, KZ?
My favorite Tarantino film, Jackie Brown. Honestly,
I like that one too.
Just the performances alone, that score, that unrelenting mystery, and of course, you know, just everyone from Samuel Jackson down to Pam Grier, just every single note is just hit perfectly. And Glorious Bastards to me always just felt over the top, and I mean it's intentionally over the top, and I think it gets better with repeat viewings, and of course, you know, Christoph Waltz is a great presence on screen. Just
he hasn't done anything as good since, I don't think. That role was just made for him, but he really hasn't recreated that magic of that character and that scene, that dialogue, man.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, it's definitely his. It was definitely one of his last great ones. But yeah.
I love it. How about you, Zach?
All right,
In the aughts, the 2000s.
All right, so I'm going to start off with.
Naughties.
I'm going to start with. I kind of went with what I thought were visually arresting films, because this is a really good time for technology and filmmaking to kind of work together. It feels like filmmaking finally caught up with the technology, and vice versa. And the first choice that I have was Robert Rodriguez's Sin City, which is absolutely a spectacular adaptation of Frank Miller's set of graphic novels. And I mean, everything in this film is just gorgeously done. You know, even being going from a low budget green screen film to this is just spectacular. Great performances from Mickey Rourke, from Bruce Willis, Benicio del Toro, Jessica Alba. Just everyone in this movie is just intense and beautiful. And like I said, when you look at the movie and you watch it shot for shot from the comic book, you see exactly what they were able to capture. I mean, this, quite frankly, you know, beats out Watchmen for the comic book movie of the decade. Like I said, it showed that you could do adult material. You didn't have to sell to kids. You basically got a brutal, rough
film noir.
Film noir, and of course, like I said, you get great chilling performances, enhanced by CGI this time, enhanced by the computer, enhanced by what they're able to do visually. Robert Rodriguez has a great eye. Frank Miller had a great idea. Bringing the two of them together for this film is just spectacular. It's one of those films that I watch over and over again and catch something new. I'll read the book over and over again to catch something new and see the two of them combined. If you love the source material and you love Robert Rodriguez films and Frank Miller work, it's a great combination that you just cannot get enough of. It's one of those films that you just will go back and watch over and over.
It was one of those movies I never thought they would adapt, and like a character like the Yellow Bastard in comic book form is like, oh my God, how could they ever do this in a film? And they did it. He pulled it off.
Elijah Wood as Kevin. He doesn't say a word in the film, and he's chilling.
Yes.
The second one that I chose kind of goes on the opposite end of the spectrum, and that's Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums. Wes is a really divisive filmmaker because a
I love Wes
lot of and yeah, I do too.
I love horror films.
But the thing is that so much of what he does is clever for the sake of being clever, but it's so entertaining to watch on screen.
Yeah.
Visually, it's just stunning to look at.
Yeah,
Some of the songs.
right. It's a retro feel with a modern take. Like I said, Wes Anderson really understands the scope of what film looks like when it's art.
Yeah.
And Royal Tenenbaums is my favorite of his films because it gets just great performances from everyone involved. Because, like I said, you're not seeing, Gene Hackman as. You're not seeing Bill Murray as. You're seeing these people completely inhabit these characters. These miserable characters. And it is a miserable story. But the color palette, the story itself is just phenomenal to watch. Like I said,
Dialogue
it's
is hilarious.
yeah, and the quick cuts, the retro feel of everything in it. It's just a beautiful film to watch, and you can see it. Like I said, this is just Wes Anderson getting started because you see what he brings to stuff like stop motion with the Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs. You see, like I said, him grow as a filmmaker into stuff like Grand Budapest Hotel, Moonrise Kingdom. Just like I said, weird little stories that carve out a niche, and like I said, it's a style that's definitely his own.
Yeah.
And getting to see him get the most of these actors by having them inhabit these characters, it's a really kind of great experiment in getting to watch cinema as film. Because like I said, I'm a B movie guy. And like I said, getting to go on the opposite spectrum and see something that's beautifully visually arresting as well as fun to watch.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel over your head. It feels like an art film that you can really enjoy.
Yeah, he's left-handed in a world of right-handers. This is a film I have to see because I'm indifferent about it. I think I saw it one time and I fell asleep, so I don't have a really good. I can't say it was boring when I fell asleep. I think I was just tired. So this is a film I have to revisit because I'm pretty indifferent about it at the moment.
Go back and watch it, but watch it in one of those moods where you're ready to be dragged down, because it is a dragged down story. I'm not gonna lie.
So I should watch it right after I watch No Country for Older Men and
Yellowstone.
and There Will Be Blood, because those are very slow and dark.
Yeah. And speaking of slow and dark, let's get into the third film. Thank you for the segue. I want to get into possibly my favorite film of this decade, and it was The Wrestler. Darren Aronofsky, and like I said, I actually want to combine this with the other film that I put in the
Black Swan.
Black Swan, because I think they're really companion pieces. Both of these films are breakdowns of performance artists in different ways. Actually, if I recall correctly, Aronofsky intended these films to be aired together.
Okay.
Because I would love to see a supercut of these two films together. But like I said, you have Mickey Rourke playing a professional wrestler at the end of his career, and this is really the performance of his lifetime. This is really him coming back into the fold. That's got him as the Academy Award nomination because he goes in deep into this world. Like I said, I'm a B movie guy. I'm also a pro wrestling guy, and because I know the stories and I know the struggle that these guys face, getting to see it on screen and getting to see it raw and real, it's punishing. And watching Mickey Rourke do everything a professional wrestler does, including going into the steroids, going into the build, going into all these things that a broken down wrestler goes through. Like I said, these are stories I know. It's stunning. And the other thing is, when you compare it with Black Swan and you compare it with Natalie Portman's intense dive into psychosis over being, a tremendous ballet dancer, the two movies balance each other out. But like I said, they're raw for what they are, because like I said, it's just, a lot of one camera shot, just low budget, super digital. But like I said, it's such intense character performances that you just get drawn in, and you just get drawn into, you get drugged down with them. And that's what Aronofsky really does best, is he drags you down with him. I mean, we'll put aside
Requiem for a Dream is one of those films that will just drag you down to the pits of hell.
Oh God, yeah. And Pi is a religious experience, but good God, I don't know if I ever want to see it again.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's films that leave you raw, but he captures breakdown just so well.
Yeah.
And, like I said, it's not uplifting films, but they're so raw and beautiful and real and but while being at the same time, disturbing and diverse and things like that.
Yeah.
Just watching Black Swan.
It's
and the
bordering on a
devastation.
horror film, you know.
Yeah, it is a horror film, and The Wrestler is to all intents and purposes a horror film too. Just it's the horrors of performance in real life, and like I said, they're films that I will watch over and over again, but I'll watch it with a really heavy heart because both films drag you down, but. Good God!
That's
of a lifetime. Man.
That's a good idea, Zach. I think we need to do a segment on critically acclaimed movies that are shot well, done well, but you just can't watch it more than once because of the gravitas of it. It's like, for me, I can't. My movie like that is 12 Years a Slave. I can't watch that movie again. Now, I got Lupita Nyong'o an Academy Award for her performance, and I love Fassbender, and I love all the folks that are in it, but that's just not a movie I can watch more than once, even though it's critically acclaimed, great acting, great shot. And I would say another one kind of like that as well would be The Passion of the Christ. I can't watch that film again. That brutal beating.
Speaking of,
I can't.
Mel Gibson, that movie with Andrew Garfield, the war movie. What's that one?
Oh,
Hacksaw
Ridge.
Yeah, that's a great. I enjoyed that movie, but I could not watch it again because it's just too brutal, like hard. Like you just don't want to see these people go through these things. It's just too much.
Mine for that is Lars von Trier's Dancer in the Dark. I'll never.
That's
I
hard.
watch that and I cry tears.
That's hard. And I love Bjork too, and she does a phenomenal job. And only Bjork could have played that role as whimsical as it was needed to be.
Truth.
But it is hard to watch it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, mine then, if we're there, is so in the aughts. I think the aughts started off well because of a movie. I'm going out of order here, KZX. I don't want to be crazy.
No problem. We're good.
Is The Gladiator. That was 2000. So I think the 2000s start off well because here you go. You've got Ridley Scott. You've got Russell Crowe, we talked about before. And we take this film back to a time of ancient Rome. Talk about how a gladiator was done wrong and sold into slavery and then gets revenge on Commodus, the particular leader of the time of the Romans, who basically was just played by Joaquin Phoenix. A very great deconstruction of the dark side of a man, right? He's got every reason to be happy and everything well because his father was a great king, yet he's the dark side of his father ever would have been. And he gets to play this creepy role, but seeing how many times have people quoted the things that Maximus says, "Are you not entertained?" Right? We got that before we later on got, "This is Sparta," right? So
Russell Crowe when he cared about his abs, unlike Unhinged. Sorry, sorry, Russ.
And you got Jaime Hansu in here, who I think was just born a little too soon because he would have been a great Black Panther, but I still love Chadwick Boseman. But he's in here, and I just love that. See, this is a film in Gladiator that can take a serious topic, unlike you, Marvel, and doesn't have to kill it with a bunch of goofy jokes. But when they do use humor in this movie, it's about 3 times. It doesn't rob, and it's not like everybody's trying to opine for the camera to try to be funny guy. So I love the scene. I always think about this scene where he's talking to Jaime Hansu, and he says, "What are those?" And he's got a little figurine of his wife and a little figurine of his son. And he goes, "What are those?" He goes, "This is my family." And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "So what do you tell that one?" And he goes, "Well, I tell my son, keep your feet in, keep your legs down." "And what do you say to that one?" He goes, "That's my wife, and don't you worry about what I tell her." But that scene with all these men who are barbaric, they're sent out to be killed, and they have to stay alive, and if they don't, they're dead, and then they get to go to the next city and do it all over again, and just the barbaricness of it all, and the fact that Commodus plays so well by Joaquin Phoenix is just creepy with his vibe of incestuousness with his sister, and
the bloodlust when he's watching the games.
Yes.
In the arena.
Yes.
Sticking his tongue out.
Yeah.
Enjoying it all.
And Ridley Scott is just at his best when he keeps the stakes high.
Yes.
You see that in just everything the guy's done.
This movie in Kingdom of Heaven, this is Ridley Scott at the top of his game. But
totally.
Kingdom of Heaven, the director's cut, not the theatrical cut. Don't never watch the theatrical.
We'll take your mind on that one. We'll take your advice on that one. Now, the next two, I think this is important because in the aughts, in my mind, and perhaps people could make other cases, but to me, this is when superhero movies were the best they ever were. And I think since then, we've kind of copied the formula. Some other ones, good ones have come out, no doubt. But to me, in 2008, we got Iron Man, and we also got Dark Knight. First, I'll talk about Iron Man. So here again, we have Jon Favreau, who I love to death, and he's a real comic book fan, you could tell. We bring back Robert Downey Jr., who at this point in time, everybody was kind of like, nah, stay away from him, he's trouble. If you hire him for a project, he may not show up. And he may be drunk.
Better get an insurance policy.
Better get an insurance policy, yes.
Overdoses again.
And so it was his good friend Terrence Howard, who's no longer in it anymore. We ended up getting another roadie instead. But he was the one that helped talk Jon Favreau into saying, listen, you gotta make this Robert Downey Jr. because he would be the perfect Iron Man. He would just be it.
Yeah, he is absolutely the Tony Stark man.
Yes, he is. And so when you watch it, so then you get to see Jon Favreau's chops because he's able to take a comic book superhero, which we've had a few before, right? But not like this, where you actually care about the character, even though he's arrogant and stuck up. But that whole time that he spends in the cave, realizing what he's done, what his name has done, what they've sold as a family, weapons and stuff, and who's gotten a hold of them, and what they use the Stark Industry stuff for, and him having that change of heart, and then them using the whole heart thing in there because he has that solar blast chest thing that he has now, and that heart thing that they've tried to put into there. I thought that's intelligent for a comic book film, because normally it'd just be just show up and just shoot some stuff, will you, and stop the guy with the blue glowy thing from blowing up the world with the blue glowy thing, right? This movie carried you through. You cared about Tony Stark. You wanted to see a guy who was arrogant but kind of funny about it, see him come to Earth, and what would he do for good rather than what he would do in just his opulence, just because he could, right? And so I love that with that, and Jon Favreau, I thought, did that well. And then you also have, so then you have Dark Knight also come out in 2008. So Marvel kills it with Iron Man, right? Before they get to Avengers, you have to have Iron Man. But you get Dark Knight, and how many times we have to talk about this? But this is the greatest comic book movie ever. I don't consider it a comic book movie if it's about a comic book character, but this is the best movie, if you will, out of all of the superhero movies. Whether you like superhero movies or not, if you watch The Dark Knight, you get the sensibilities of Christopher Nolan saying, I want to put this in a real world with real things that would most likely happen, and how this guy would survive running around in a stupid suit and changing up his voice so that people can't tell it's Bruce Wayne.
And it's a sequel too.
Yeah.
Yes.
But good
it's almost
God.
a standalone film on its own. You know?
All three of them are.
Yes, yes. And until this time, what you could argue was that the best sequel ever after the first one came out was Empire Strikes Back. This movie comes out and you go, now Empire Strikes Back has some competition because this is a great second piece. And the idea that the villain, because you know I had to get there, we have, in my mind, and you could certainly make arguments, but this is the best version of Joker I've ever seen adapted to the Batman that he's countering against, right? And so seeing Heath Ledger's Joker and just knowing how he had to win that award posthumously, and then just seeing the lines and how intelligently Christopher Nolan films are just written anyway. You have that here. And so I love that line still, and there's tons of them. We've talked about it before, where that, and I use this line every day almost, where I can say, you know, you either die a hero or become the villain, right? And if you think about it, that's Star Wars. It was the hero, but it went on long enough to become the villain. So, but anyway, that's a whole other thing, right?
Oh,
yes, right?
We're gonna have to get you back on rant corner on that, dude.
Oh, they don't want me on there because I'll tell the truth.
Oh,
anyway. I see past the fanboy eyes. But yeah, so in this film, so to me, once again, golden age for superhero films in my mind, because they went the next notch. Now, this is not to say that Sam Raimi's Spider-Man wasn't good and the stuff that preceded this, but this took on a whole nother level. You could kind of feel for Stark, and at the same time, you could definitely feel for, obviously, the villain, and then also the superhero, and that was Christopher Nolan doing that for us. So that was the odds for me. Let's jump into real fast the teams. We're going to talk about
The
those
10's.
films. The 10's.
The 10's.
Carlos, which films shaped you out of that decade of the 10's, which is not that long ago?
Yeah, it's not that long ago, and it doesn't seem that long since I saw this film in 2011. I saw it at the Angelica, and it was an experience. It was The Tree of Life, the Terrence Malick film. Uh, Brad Pitt, Jessica Chastain, Sean Penn. You could tell it was a very personal film by Terrence Malick, and Terrence Malick is one of those filmmakers now who you either really get into his films, or you don't. Some people consider his films very boring, or they don't make sense. There's no really storytelling; it's more stream of consciousness. But that's what I appreciate about his film, especially this one. It's almost a spiritual film for me anyway. The opening of the film is just it's visual imagery and sound and music, and it's basically telling the beginning of time. You know how the earth was formed out of primordial soup, and it has scenes of dinosaurs and jungle and mountains and volcanoes and things, and then it gets to Waco, Texas. Looks like the 1950s, and I'm wondering if maybe part of this was autobiographical in a way, because I know Terrence Malick is from Texas. He probably grew up in a town like Waco, if not Waco. I have never looked it up, but you can say the performances. There really isn't any like story per se, but there is in a way, and it's basically a family. Kids, Brad Pitt is a very domineering husband, and Jessica Chastain plays his wife, and she's very subservient to him. And then the kids, they're those kind of kids in the old days when you used to run around the neighborhood and throw rocks at abandoned buildings and break windows and play with sticks and shoot your brother in the hand with a BB gun, stuff like that. It's just like that's what it is. And then it gets to a point near the end where this man is grown. The boy has grown into a man, and then he's looking back and then seeing his future and so forth. And wow, it just blew me away when I saw this. And it's one of my favorite films, and it's one of those films where the filmmaker is doing his thing, whether the audience cares about it or not doesn't matter to him. He's telling a story that he wants to tell. That's Terrence Malick for me.
That's good.
2012, The Master, Paul Thomas Anderson again. This film is amazing. It's kind of a vaguely retelling of L. Ron Hubbard and the cult of personality he had when he was in the beginnings of Scientology. He was a science fiction writer, but he decided to start his own religion,
Okay.
And he created all this stuff which sounds very science fiction-y.
Sure.
People took it seriously, and they still believe in it. It is a cult, I consider it, and it's a very damaging cult, I believe.
Yeah.
But Philip Seymour Hoffman plays the L. Ron Hubbard type character, and then this guy comes into his life. Joaquin Phoenix, he just got out of the Navy. This guy is I don't know how to describe his character. He's almost bordering on sociopath. He's a heavy drinker. He's an alcoholic to the point of he'll mix chemicals and like turpentine and alcohol to create these concoctions and drink it, and sometimes people he's given it to have died from poisoning. He was working on a farm with these migrant workers and created this thing, and a guy drank it, got sick from it, and died, and he had to run. So he was on the run and just comes across this ship, and there's a bunch of people. It looks like they're having a party. And it's Philip Seymour Hoffman's character regaling these people with his personality, and these people are just in awe of him. Everything that comes out of his mouth, they're just on the edge of their seats listening to him. And then there's the doubters, and then how he faces off with them. But the scenes between Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix, the performances are just on another level. The scene where he first kind of does this audit of Joaquin Phoenix's character, where he has him ask him a bunch of questions he has to answer, and he's not supposed to blink. He's like, oh my God. It just goes on, and it's like almost, ooh, like they just tell him, I'm just gonna run the camera. You just do the scene. You know, forget about the dialogue and just do it. It's almost like that. But yeah, it's just a masterful piece of work. And again, Johnny Greenwood's score adds another layer to the film where you're just watching it and you're just listening, and the music and the sound is just incredible.
It's awesome.
2017, Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan. Wow. Yeah, I was blown away by this film.
Literally, the sound was so loud in the theaters.
From
God.
the opening scene, the gunshots in that street, you know. And I saw it in IMAX, of course. I saw it 3 or 4 times in the theater. I was just so immersed by it. And it does immerse you in the film. And it's long camera takes of these guys, and it follows this one guy he was a soldier in the street, and then he gets to the beach, and then the beach, they're waiting for ships to come and pick them up. Meanwhile, they're getting strafed by German planes. And the brilliant thing about this film is the way it telescopes time, because there's a 1 day, a 1 week, or what is it, 1 hour, 1 day, and 1 week. Or I can't remember what it was, but it's telling 3 different stories, and then by the end of the film, they just all come together in one time. And that's a theme of Chris Nolan's every film is time. It's either time travel or going backwards, or the levels and dreams and things like this. But it's always has that tick, 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 and that's a theme through the movies, that ticking, tick, 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 the music in the film, and it's just incredible war film, and that closing scene with Tom Hardy landing his plane on the beach. It's just wow, it's just breathtaking.
Yeah, it was an incredible way to end the film. And of course, the film caught there were some folks who didn't care for it. So all the folks who were over the age of 60, I think, because it was so loud. And, old folks, when they go they're going to see these movies about World War II and all that stuff, right? They're going to go. So I remember hearing back then, they were like, it's too loud. It's too loud. They need to tone it down.
Seems like they made it loud because they're old and deaf, so it's like loud enough for them to hear it.
Right. That's what you would think.
It was still that loud. It was like,
yeah. I remember because a lot of veterans wanted to go see it because of the subject matter. Oh, yeah. So they love these kind of films, and some of them just didn't like the way it was cut. They felt like because they wanted the traditional story, and I was just like, and I remember I had to have that conversation with some friends of mine. They're older, their parents, I guess, and we're talking to my parents about it. And I had to let him know. It's like, no, it's Christopher Nolan. He's not going to come in here and do the same boring thing everyone else has done. He's going to come in and find a different way to shoot it and a different way to tell the story.
Get lost in the timeline. This ain't a romance. This is a combat movie.
Yes, sir. Okay, Zach.
All right. So, like I said, I think what I think we can like about the 2010s, because like I said, we had this discussion offline, was this was not a decade that we could go back and say great film, but I think it underestimates, because what we finally get in 2010 is that we have so much content out there that now you have filmmakers who are getting to make films on their own terms. The first film that I chose here was Edgar Wright's Baby Driver.
Yes.
I believe that, like I said, this is what we got instead of getting Edgar Wright's Ant-Man.
Yes.
What we got was an original chase sequence, music video, just long form, wonderful ode to soundtracks, to be honest with you. You have one of the greatest car chase sequences in the first 15 minutes since The French Connection. You have an incredible title sequence where basically you're just seeing him dance through where you're seeing the main character dance through the credits. You've got intense performances from Jamie Foxx and John Hamm as the heavies, and of course the soundtrack is the star of this film, because everything is in sequence with it. Someone pointed out to me, and this is really slight. Go back and watch it again with this in mind. The main character, Baby, has a hum in his ears that when he has to do everything, he has to do things with the music in there because he has tinnitus. He has to have music in his ears to block out that tinnitus. He blocks out that hum. When he's on screen, that tinnitus is there. When the music is gone, the tinnitus is there. You'll hear that hum, and it just goes to show it goes to show just how important the soundtrack is to this film. And I mean, it's gorgeous. But I mean, like I said, this is a film that Edgar Wright has been wanting to do since he was a kid. I mean, when you hear John Spencer Blues Explosion's Bell Bottoms kick in at the beginning, he wanted to use this song in a film since he was like 12. So, like I said, it's a real ode to what soundtracks can do, and it's a film that was made in Edgar Wright's terms because it's a robbery film that you haven't seen. You've seen robbery films, but have you seen it with this? From the point of view of not only the driver, but also the music that they're listening to. And it's just an original and fun film. And like I said, Edgar Wright is easily my favorite filmmaker of the 21st century, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's funny when I saw that title, Baby Driver. Being an old Kiss head, I was like, "What? The Peter Criss song? This is awesome!" Which would have been cool if the Peter Criss song was in there.
Well, wasn't it the Simon Garfunkel song first?
Well, if they may have written a song called that,
Okay.
but Peter Criss wrote one called "Baby Driver" back on the Hotter Than Hell album.
Okay.
And when I saw "Baby Driver," I thought this would be cool if they put this on there because it'd be awesome because it ties in. You know.
Now I'm gonna have to go look that up.
Yeah, take a look at it.
I'm gonna have to find that. All right. So the second film that I chose, Jordan Peele's Get Out, and PJ, I'm almost surprised that this wasn't on your list. But like I said, you've got again just a horror film made on Jordan Peele's terms.
Yep.
You have a real tremendous statement on race. I don't want to go into the plot too much because I don't want to give away any of it if someone hasn't seen it. But if you haven't seen it by now, you're really doing yourself a disservice.
Yes.
But it's just a wonderful, intense horror film that, very much for, one of the first times in, the 21st century, we're getting a horror film that's really centered around race, and it's just frightening. But I mean, it's visually interesting. Performances are again stellar, and it's just one of those films where you go back and then you watch it, a couple of years later. I mean, let time pass and go in and watch it again, and it just draws you in over and over. And the gore is fantastic. The kills are wonderful, but like I said, at its heart, it is just a really good horror film. And I mean, it's something that you don't expect out of Jordan Peele, who's a really tremendous comedian. You're not expecting out of Key and Peele.
Yes.
It's like, okay, he made a horror film, but when you go back and watch Key and Peele sketches, they're really horror centric. They really, really are. And Jordan has a great eye as a director, and like I said, as a writer. It's really good to see. I hate to say this, but I still haven't seen Us yet. I'm embarrassed to admit that, but like I said, Jordan has become a great new voice in horror and in filmmaking, and I think it's a really kind of great testimony to just how good comedians can be when you give them a chance.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of films I couldn't put in here because I could have put Black Panther in here. That's another one I loved, but it was hard.
All right. So the third one I chose, and this is one that's going to bring in the hate mail, bring in the comments.
Bring it. Let's go.
Bring it. Do it. I chose Pacific Rim.
Oh, hell.
Oh, God.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, I know.
Guillermo, this is my excuse to say Guillermo del Toro.
I loved this film because it's unapologetically a film that Guillermo wanted to make. It is alien.
Monsters.
It is giant monsters fighting giant robots in an urban format. The performances are terrible. But the visuals are just amazing.
Idris Elba.
It is the film
Charlie
that.
Hunnam.
It is the film that IMAX was made for. It embraces what IMAX was made to do. Giant robots fighting aliens, driven by Sons of Anarchy. It's all over the place. It's over the top in every sense of the imagination, from the acting to the story to just the visuals. Everything of it is over the top, and it's wonderful if you like that kind of film. I love B movies. I love kaiju movies. I love giant robot movies. I'm 12 again when I'm watching this film. And like I said, it's a film that I wanted to go see because I wanted to sit in a movie theater in the summer, eating popcorn and just watching a movie. And that it's for an hour and 40 minutes, you're getting giant robots fighting giant aliens, and
So it's a Marvel Avengers movie again.
No, it's not because you can see who's pulling the strings on this one.
Ah, okay.
But like I said, it's a Guillermo del Toro passion project,
Sure,
and when he gets when Guillermo del Toro gets a passion project, he's going to hold on to it, and it sinks in. Like I said, this is not a film that everyone's going to like. It's barely a film that anyone liked, but it was an influential film for me because it was a film that, for someone who enjoys this kind of action, it's great.
And then, like you said, this is one where technology caught up to where he could put his vision on the screen the way he wanted to do it.
Right.
The kaiju designs are incredible in this film.
Right, and screw your Godzilla movie. Screw that.
Oh, yeah.
Screw that. No. No, this is the way a kaiju film should be. Destroying stuff on a big scale and a big screen. It's absolutely just fun. Okay, so we're gonna go over time today, but take your time. We're good.
Yeah,
We're good.
yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Wow, I'm surprised. So in the teens, then what I decided to do here is, since we've talked a lot about the movies in 2019 already, I didn't want to put any of them in there. Although there are a lot of great ones from 2019, like 1917, Ford versus Ferrari, that sort of thing. So I decided I'd focus more on the beginning and probably the middle more so, since we've already talked about the others. And so to that end of talking about the greatest sequels out there, this one counts right there in the top 3, if not the top 5. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, 2014. This movie is right there with Dark Knight in its trilogy, right there with Empire Strikes Back, because to me, this was the best one out of those 3. And so with this one, you've got it's 10 years after the simian flu had started to kill Homo sapiens. And it turns out that Caesar and his small band of followers were actually starting to thrive and do well. But then you have the Homo sapiens, the humans, trying to figure out how do we get where we need to get to keep our race alive. And then they run into each other. And then there's old feelings about each other. And then boom, here comes your movie. So you have Andy Serkis playing Caesar, who I love. And he does such a great job. And again, you talk about some of the best motion capture, CGI, whatever, animatronics.
Technology
you really
catching up to filmmaking.
that these monkeys can talk. You really believe it, the way the movements are with the mouth. It is perfectly synced. You have a great villain in Toby Kebbell as in Koba, which they're perfect foil for Caesar. This is great. And I just thought that this movie was done so well. And I thought, wow, again, we get that good sequel that's even better than the first one. Like, that's a good day.
Yeah.
When something like that happens.
All 3 in the trilogy are just stellar.
It had a singular vision.
Yes, it had a singular vision, and it drove the point home. And even if you didn't see the first one or the third one, you could still link into what was going on here. It also had the commentary, just how people see others, how we other people who are not like us. That whole theme still plays through, and then we just get that good versus evil, and good versus evil again when you see Caesar. Oh yeah, yes,
on horses and rifles.
And speaking of that motion capture, we finally get to see motion capture in real life. You're getting to see them getting to take it from the green screen to a real life situation, and wow, do they do it incredibly. It's so believable.
It is. It's phenomenal. And so then the last 2 that I couldn't get away from is what they have in common is the same writer. The first one is going to be Sicario 2015. So after we get Dawn of the Planet of the Apes in 2014, we get this beautiful gem in Sicario. So again, you got Emily Blunt, you got Benicio del Toro, who's the collector. You got James Brolin, who is Thanos. You got John Bernthal in this, who is Punisher. So I mean, if you look at it from that perspective, you have that going on. But I love the idea that you have this cartel drug stuff going on. They bring in somebody who doesn't know what's going on as a good cover so that they can't kind of turn her in Emily Blunt. So she's the kind of the outcast that kind of comes in a group of all boys, if you will. And then she sees some of the most horrific stuff that's gone on that she never would have thought, but she's not tied into it. And so then this film makes you decide back and forth between who really are the bad guys. Is it the drug cartel? Is it the CIA operatives and DEA operatives that are working on their own, doing some kind of covert stuff? Like, who's the worst one? And then, right when you think the story is getting kind of, okay, so she's a fish out of water in the situation, she's throwing up when she sees crazy things, then you have Benicio del Toro. And he comes in and just steals it away from Emily Blunt in this. Because at first you're with Emily, you're seeing it through Emily's eyes at first, right, through her character. But then he comes in. And then you have that great scene at the end. I won't spoil for you that you have to see when Benicio del Toro goes through everything he needs to get to the guy. And what happens there to the guy and the family and everything else. And then what happens when they get back. So this film, Taylor Sheridan knows how to write and knows how to twist up real themes that really happen, but make them seem so much more plausible than they probably really are. And then you get invested in the characters because of it. So that was great. And then, of course, my favorite film, and I would say it's not just for the teens, maybe even if it wasn't for Dark Knight, maybe for 2 decades, is Hell or High Water 2016. So imagine this, 2014, you're getting Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, best of that bunch in my mind. Then you get Sicario, brand new, right? Who's this writer coming out of nowhere, just writing some good stuff. And then to top it, Hell or High Water. So I love this. So you have Chris Pine, who's showing you that he's not just a pretty face, he actually really can act. I think he's following the steps of Brad Pitt, who at first Brad Pitt, everybody thought he was just a pretty face until he actually showed you, and he could actually do some really good roles in movies that you would care about, like Fury. I thought he was very dominating in Fury, Fight Club, all of those sort of things. So you have Bridges in this as well, Todd Bridges and his companion. And so here you have, and Ben Foster, who I love from 3:10 to Yuma, and also
underrated actor.
Yes,
sure.
very underrated actor, and I love him. And so you have these 2 brothers. One's a hothead, and one's the intelligent brother who has a family and kids he needs to take care of. The hothead brother's the convict that's been in and out of jail. Mom's given up on him. And then you have Bridges on this other side, another story going on this Texas Ranger who's doing his last hurrah before it's about time for him to quit. But the last gig before he quits is going to be this one. Who is robbing all these banks and what's going on? And so right when you think this is going to be your typical cops and robber show, it turns out it's much deeper than just that. You also see how nefarious banking was in poor Western Texas towns, because they owned almost everything, because they knew underneath that land was oil. And so they were doing everything they could to try to get people evicted off of it so that they could own it, so that they could then mine for the oil and then make a lot of money. But that means you have to get the people off of it first. So now you have this sense, a real reason to say, well, in a way, I kind of understand why the brothers are doing what they're doing, because the banks have been killing their mom with interest fees and all these other things forever, and now she's dead and she can't even, who takes care of it now?
Banks are the real thieves.
Right, the banks are the real thieves, right? And then you have the juxtaposition of these Texas Rangers, and they're joking back and forth with the Native American thing. His partner is Gil, right? He's a Native American, and they have these jokes back and forth, with each other, and he's just going to try to give him a big show out before he finally retires. He's just giving them hell. And they have to go track these 2 brothers. And in a way, you're just sitting there going, yeah, but in a way, I understand why they're doing this. But then at the same time, you also want Bridges to catch him, because
it's the anti-hero.
Yeah,
you root
so
for the bad guys
right,
Bonnie and Clyde.
It's kind of the opposite of what we were talking about in Natural Born Killers last episode.
Yes.
Was like I said, you're cheering for the villains and you don't know why in that one. You're cheering for the villains in this one, but you know why.
Yes.
So it's a real kind of
very much that. And the
Nice.
point here is the locale sells it all. The ancillary characters who you don't think are that important because they just seem to be in the scene, they're in the scene for a reason. They have great one-liners. They set up great sarcastic jokes. In all the dreariness of living in a West Texas town where everybody's poor and the bank's evicting everybody for the land, you see the sarcasm and how the people are still trying to live in that area. There's a great scene you have to see with this waitress. There's 2 scenes with 2 different waitresses, but there's this older waitress that's just, it's phenomenal. It's worth watching, even if you just want to see that. But at the end, the whole big piece here is, how do they handle this, which is basically a modern day Western. Instead of it being a shootout, they have this war with words of how they're going to handle what needs to happen next, because each one had a fatality on each side. And now it's about who's going to make who whole. And that dialogue, the way Taylor Sheridan writes it, he didn't like, you're a duty head. No, you are. It's none of that bull crap that you see basically almost like what's in Marvel. Instead, this is like, we're going to negotiate this stuff. And then we'll find out who's who. And we'll see who's going to show up to who and who's going to show up where. And we'll see who will pay for what. And that's literally how they handle it. And then you see Todd Bridges. He walks off.
Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges. Sorry, Jeffrey. I'm going back to different strokes. You see Todd.
What
Bridges
you talking
walk
about,
off with
Willis?
that- right? And he has that walk. Right? He has that Texas Ranger. I'm a badass
Strut.
walk when he just walks off like, okay, we'll see who and we'll see when and we'll see how. And he kind of does that thing, and he just walks off, tall Texan. The frame way he frames it, Texas, everything's big in Texas, expansive ground, and you just met one of the badass Texas Rangers ever.
And it's interesting that we all chose Texas filmmakers on this. No, in this list because, like I said, you had Joel and Ethan Coen, No Country for Old Men. You had Robert Rodriguez, Sin City, and you had Hell or High Water. Three kind of
Yes,
different takes.
David McKenzie.
Terrence Malick.
Yeah, three different kinds of takes on like I said, what our great state kind of brings. So yeah. Anyway,
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. And so now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and just jump into our shout out. So who you shouting out to, Carlos?
All right, let's shout out to my son Matt and my daughter Nicole. Been talking movies a lot with my son. I'm introducing a lot of movies that he hasn't seen that he's really getting into.
That's fun, isn't it?
Uncut gems and stuff like that. He's really getting into it. My cousins out in California, Stella and Joelle, and all my pals on Twitter. It's been 10 years to Sunday that I've been on Twitter.
Nice.
10 years. Jesus.
10 years. Wow.
Where does time go?
Okay, Zach, who you shouting out to?
all right. Shout outs to fam watching us on Facebook Live, and of course, shout outs to all our shows on DallasOnAir.com, including our sports shows, Best for Business, including 12 Pack, also including, like I said, our shows who alternate with us on first and third Sundays. That is going to be the Randcourt Pit Live, Isle of Toys, and of course, hopefully making its comeback in September, Figment's The Unexplained Mysteries podcast. Shout outs to Cole Houston and Eddie Medina on that, and like I said, you can tune in those guys next Sunday here on DallasOnAir.com at this same bat time, same bat channel.
Love it, love it, love it. And my shout outs are going to go to Horror Mike, who will be back on the show again for our whole horror segment and Halloween fun. So Horror Mike, we're shouting out to him. Yeah, we're all
Favorite
looking
time
out
of
for
the
him.
year.
And Sean Presley, Lauren Wiedauer, Tristan Frazier, Harry Thomas, Troy Ross, Michael Paul, Daniel Meza, Mad Mel, Eddie Medina, of course, and Cole Houston, Stephanie Crane, Scott Laney, and Sandra. Those are my shout outs. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for watching. Hey, what did you like? What were your favorite movies of the 2000s, the aughts, or the 10s? Let us know. Put it in the comments. Reach out to us on YouTube, all the spaces that you can find us, and we will make sure that we give you a shout out. All right, until then, we're out of here.
Sayonara.
He said it.
It's
Sayonara.
out. Wear your mask.
Wash your hands.
Brush them teeth. I'd buy that for $1. Hand sanitizer, that is.